In the heart of America, as the world grappled with the uncertainty and fear of the COVID-19 pandemic, a story of breathtaking greed and deception quietly unfolded. The streets of Minneapolis, usually bustling with life, stood eerily empty, while behind closed doors, a scheme was taking shape that would shock the nation. What began as a noble mission to feed hungry children during a time of crisis soon spiraled into the largest pandemic-era fraud in U.S. history. Across Minnesota, volunteers and community organizations worked tirelessly to provide meals to families in need, believing they were part of something good. But beneath the surface, a darker reality was emerging. The Feeding Our Future case saw an astonishing $250 million siphoned from federal nutrition programs, funds that were supposed to ensure no child went hungry. Instead, paperwork was forged, numbers were inflated, and money meant for the most vulnerable was funneled into private pockets. This was no simple scam. It was a calculated betrayal of public trust, orchestrated by a network of individuals who saw opportunity in chaos. The impact rippled through neighborhoods, leaving a deep scar on the community and eroding faith in the very systems meant to protect them. While families lined up at food pantries, uncertain where their next meal would come from, a sophisticated web of fraudsters exploited a system designed to help the vulnerable. The contrast between those in need and those taking advantage could not have been more stark. Money meant for children's meals instead funded luxury cars, designer watches, and lavish homes. The scale of excess was staggering, as those behind the scheme flaunted their newfound wealth, seemingly indifferent to the suffering around them. This wasn't just a financial crime, it was a profound moral failure. It preyed on the desperation of families and children, turning hope into heartbreak and leaving many to wonder how such a betrayal could happen in their own backyard. The scandal sent shockwaves from Minnesota all the way to Washington, D.C., raising urgent questions about oversight, accountability, and the vulnerability of public programs during times of crisis. Lawmakers and officials scrambled to respond, but the damage had already been done. As U.S. Attorney Andrew Lugar put it, this was a brazen scheme of staggering proportions, one that required a massive federal response and a relentless pursuit of justice. The investigation would become one of the largest of its kind in recent memory. Dozens of defendants, a mountain of evidence, and a global money trail are still being unraveled in courtrooms today. Prosecutors, investigators, and journalists continue to piece together the full extent of the fraud, determined to hold those responsible to account. This is the story of how a program meant to feed the future became a vehicle for stealing it, and the ongoing fight to reclaim what was lost, restore trust, and ensure that such a betrayal never happens again. The fraud's roots stretch back to the chaotic early days of COVID-19, when the world seemed to grind to a halt overnight. Streets emptied, businesses shuttered, and a sense of uncertainty hung in the air. As the virus spread, the normal rhythms of daily life were upended, and the systems people relied on were suddenly put to the test. With schools closed, millions of children lost access to daily meals. For many families, school cafeterias were a crucial source of nutrition, and their closure left a gaping hole in the safety net. Parents scrambled to find alternatives, while communities worried about how to feed their most vulnerable members. The USDA responded by waiving strict requirements for its child nutrition program, aiming to get food to kids fast. Rules that once demanded careful record-keeping and in-person verification were loosened, all in the name of speed and flexibility. The hope was to prevent hunger from becoming a second crisis. This flexibility, while well-intentioned, opened the door for abuse. The usual safeguards were set aside, and oversight was reduced to a minimum. In the rush to help, cracks began to form in the system. Organizations like Feeding Our Future could now distribute food with minimal oversight. What was meant to be a streamlined process for getting meals to hungry children became an opportunity for some to take advantage of the chaos. The Minnesota Department of Education, overwhelmed by a flood of claims, struggled to keep up. Staff who were already stretched thin by the demands of the pandemic found themselves buried under mountains of paperwork, unable to verify every request. Feeding Our Future's federal aid soared from a few million to hundreds of millions in just 2 years. The sheer scale of the money flowing in was unprecedented, and it happened so quickly that few had time to ask questions. The relaxed rules, meant as a lifeline, became a golden opportunity for fraud. With little scrutiny and vast sums at stake, it was all too easy for bad actors to slip through the cracks and exploit the system for personal gain. The system designed for accountability was pushed to its breaking point. Auditors and regulators, already under immense pressure, found themselves unable to keep pace with the volume and complexity of claims. Fraudulent claims slipped through, masked as urgent pandemic relief. Paperwork was forged, numbers were inflated, and the true scale of the deception went unnoticed for months. The perfect storm for criminal enterprise had formed, a crisis that demanded speed, a system stripped of its usual checks, and opportunists ready to exploit every loophole. In the shadows of a global emergency, fraud flourished. The fraud was shockingly simple. The conspirators lied, and they lied on a massive scale. With a few strokes of a pen and some creative paperwork, they set in motion a scheme that would siphon millions from a program meant to feed hungry children. They invented fake food distribution sites, claiming to serve thousands of meals every single day to children who, in reality, didn't exist. These sites were nothing more than addresses on paper, sometimes empty buildings, sometimes just a mailbox, or even a closed community center. The reimbursement forms they submitted to the government boasted numbers that defied logic, sometimes higher than the population of entire cities. The paperwork was designed to overwhelm, with stacks of forms and highlighted totals that made the fraud look legitimate. Fake meal logs and attendance rosters, filled with random names and forged signatures, were submitted as so-called proof that the meals had been served. The conspirators even invented children, creating lists of names that were nothing but fiction. Prosecutors alleged that Feeding Our Future, the non-profit at the center of the scheme, took a cut for processing these fraudulent claims, turning a blind eye to the obvious red flags in exchange for a share of the stolen funds. Some sites claimed to serve as many as 5,000 meals a day from tiny apartments or suburban homes, places with no kitchens, no staff, and no sign of any food preparation at all. When investigators finally checked these locations, they found little to no evidence that any food had ever been served. Instead, there were empty spaces, vacant kitchens, and shell companies with no real operations. The money, meanwhile, flowed through a web of fake vendors and was laundered back to the conspirators. Cash was counted in back rooms, wire transfers zipped across accounts, and envelopes stuffed with money that changed hands in secret. In total, over 125 million fake meals were claimed, an astonishing number that reveals the scale of this criminal enterprise built entirely on lies and deception. The program, designed to help the most vulnerable children in our communities, was twisted into a tool for massive theft, leaving those it was meant to serve with nothing but empty promises. The stolen millions didn't disappear, they funded lives of luxury. Defendants bought fleets of luxury cars, mansions, and international properties. Purchases included Porsches, Teslas, and multi-million-dollar homes in exclusive suburbs. Some built custom lake houses, or bought real estate overseas. Lavish trips, expensive jewelry, and wads of cash became the norm. The scheme was driven by greed, not need. The contrast between luxury and the program's mission fueled public outrage. The scandal's imagery, cars, mansions, and cash, became a symbol of moral bankruptcy. The fraud unraveled when Minnesota education officials noticed skyrocketing claims. They reported suspicions to the USDA, triggering an FBI investigation. Agents raided offices and homes, seizing evidence and luxury goods. Financial records showed federal funds flowing straight into personal accounts. Communications revealed conspirators plotting fake invoices and rosters. Sweeping indictments followed. At least 77 people charged with wire fraud, bribery, and money laundering. The fight for justice had begun. In court, the full scale of greed was exposed. Trials featured dramatic moments, like a juror offered $120,000 to vote for acquittal. Prosecutors showed photos of luxury cars, homes, and fake meal rosters. Insiders testified, revealing the scheme's inner workings. Defendants' excuses crumbled under overwhelming evidence, bank records, texts, and fake documents. Many pleaded guilty or were convicted, with sentences reflecting the crime's severity. Abdimajid Mohammed Noor, for example, received 10 years and a $48 million restitution order. The legal process continues, but accountability is being served. Convictions are only part of the battle. The fight to recover $250 million is even harder. The government is seizing homes, cars, and cash, aiming to return funds to taxpayers. So far, only about $60 million has been recovered. Much of the money was spent on non-recoverable luxuries or sent overseas, making it hard to trace. Some assets are tied up in legal battles with family members. Forensic accountants painstakingly follow the money through shell companies and foreign accounts. Full recovery is unlikely. Much of the money may be lost forever. The cleanup is long and costly, a reminder of the fraud's lasting impact. The pursuit of stolen funds continues, but the damage is done. The scandal sparked urgent reforms in Minnesota and beyond. Lawmakers passed new laws to tighten oversight of nonprofits handling public funds. The Department of Education gained more authority to flag suspicious claims. Stricter registration and reporting requirements now make shell nonprofits harder to create. Agencies are using data analytics and more site visits to catch fraud early. On the federal level, the USDA is reviewing emergency waiver policies to add safeguards. The goal? Ensure rapid aid never comes at the expense of accountability. The Feeding Our Future scandal is a cautionary tale for Minnesota and the nation. It exposed how trust-based systems can be exploited, especially in crisis. Rebuilding trust means rigorous oversight and transparency, tracking every dollar, verifying every claim. The courage of public servants who blew the whistle was crucial. Their actions show the importance of empowering watchdogs within government. The scandal casts suspicion on many nonprofits, but also offers a chance for renewal. By strengthening laws and oversight, Minnesota can restore faith in its safety net. The lesson is clear: aid must reach those in need, and betrayal must never be repeated.